Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's the day after Thanksgiving. Did you get enough to eat? Did you sleep enough? Did your team win? Well, mine didn't. The Detroit Lions favored, having a great year going into Thanksgiving Day 8-2. By the end of the first quarter, it was nap time for Bonzo, meaning me. I woke up after halftime rather, and it became a game, but the Lions didn't look good. But happy
I'm trying to figure out what team Jared Goff was playing for yesterday.
Yeah,
he just kept giving it to Green Bay.
Well, I think that he probably had the point spread covered. He was getting paid by one team and maybe by supporters of another. I mean, when we say cough it up, we're talking about the clot in your lungs, not the ball to the other team, Einstein. Hey, it's Black Friday. Are you going out shopping? Oh, wait a minute. What do you mean? Of course not. What are you, a racist? Are you trying to suggest that when you hear Black Friday, you think of stores being vandalized, people looting, engaging in racial justice, systemic racism, five-finger discounts, cleaning off store shelves in LA, running into shoe stores, clothing stores, taking everything off the shelves while people are afraid to say anything lest they be accused of racist, and the police stand down because if they say, young man, stop, show me your hands, it'll be police brutality. I can't breathe, and if somebody slips and cracks their head, you'll be dead, and your city will pay a $27 million settlement because you too don't respect historic injustice. Hey, did anybody watch the Thanksgiving Day Macy's parade? I didn't. I'm sorry to say, but I'm gonna. I mean, after watching so many of them as a kid, I mean, how many times can you see Mickey Mouse going by?
Here, I admit, I watched 3 seconds of it on the way to tuning to Green Bay and Detroit.
All right. Well, did you see the bit where the protesters for Gaza?
I saw some passing reference.
Well, I hear they glued their hands to the street, and it raised an interesting question in my mind. If you decide to protest, you get some epoxy of some sort, and you glue your flesh to the pavement so police can't move you. What if they just left you there? At what point do the protesters say, wait a minute, come and rescue me? No, Einstein, you glued yourself to the street in the middle of moving traffic. If I was the commissioner of police in New York, I'd just leave them there. Let them figure it out. You guys glued yourself to the street. You get yourself off of it. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. And this, the best of all possible worlds. Mike and I were kicking around what to talk about today, and we decided there was really nothing to talk about. We were just in goof-off land, suffering from, the tryptophan high that comes with too much turkey and too much good food on Thanksgiving. But the world didn't stop on its axis last night. They weren't celebrating Thanksgiving in Ireland last night. No. Now, interesting media coverage of events in Ireland. If you're just waking up, shake your head, slap yourself one side of the face, then the other, have a cup of coffee, and listen up. Dublin, parts of it were on fire in a mostly peaceful protest. It wasn't mostly peaceful. It was violent right-wing lunatics who became unhinged. That's what caused the arson. Because who burns determines how the fire gets covered. As near as we can tell, yesterday in Ireland, in Dublin, perhaps I believe it was, 5 people were stabbed, including some children. One is in very serious condition. A woman is in serious condition. I'm not sure there are any fatalities yet. And the stabber, at least according to early press reports, later press reports have been scrubbed, was a guest of Ireland's, an Algerian immigrant who was there, maybe legally, maybe not, who was a guest of the government, financed, put up, hosted, and then let loose on the streets. Many in Ireland said enough. And there was a backlash last night. Angry Irish folks took to the street and they burned a hotel where immigrants are said to be staying. And they said, send them back. And it got a little frosty. Now, here is the interesting thing about the coverage of the protest. It was early to get information in the initial reporting on the event. It has become progressively harder to get information as time goes on. A recent Reuters report has now scrubbed the things. 5 people stabbed in Dublin.
After a man injured 5 people.
After a man, yeah.
Look at this official Reuters account. After a man injured 5 people in a knife attack in Dublin, rioting broke out.
So using the passive voice, rioting broke out. Oh, by the way, he stabbed me and I'm injured. Maybe you're clinging to life. Maybe you're 3 to 5 years old. Maybe it was a guest in your country with no roots in the country who was complaining, as so many have these days. Did you see the clip of the guy I think it was New York, The money's no good. The housing's no, or wait, the food's no good. The water's no good. The hotel's no good. Give us some money. Oh, sure. Yeah. Welcome to the United States of Lotto. Cross the border, you too win prizes and furry things. I think there's a pushback going on in Ireland. There's a pushback going on in Argentina, where a candidate of populist origins, Mr. Miley, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, was elected president. The Dutch elected an anti-immigration prime minister just the other night. And we see Donald Trump surging in the polls while members of the left begin to fear an authoritarian crackdown and the emergence of a new form of Nazism in America. I mean, this hysterical and historic bloviation has got to stop at some point.
Well, hold on. Let's not. So I think I said, I don't know how long ago it's been, but I know I've said this to you and on stream, that my concern about the pushback to Trump, the establishment reaction to Trump has long not, it hasn't been that the left is going to be able to accomplish whatever ridiculous goals it has. It's in fact that it is going to force someone to the right of Trump to run and win. And that the radicalization that the left is going to create by and through this continued suppression and subversion of the truth is going to result in some very, very, very disconcerting developments. Now, that's not also to say that when President Biden stands up and says that white supremacy is the biggest thing affecting the country.
No. Here's what President Biden says. Oh man, those white supremacists, they're evil dudes. Blah, blah, blah.
Well, then he's got the big red lights behind him, right?
Yeah, the Actung lights. Yes.
The point is that this is sort of a throw a stone and hide your hand effort from the establishment media. Anytime you see something like the tweet that I'll put it back on the screen here, this is what people are really reacting against, is that previously trusted legitimate institutions of news and media, Reuters, right? And especially within the legal world, Norm, many people might not know that Reuters is a big brand within the legal profession, right? Especially for legal research tools and otherwise. For a brand as big as Reuters to report on this story and not even use the word stabbed and not even use the word children, right? And then focus the emphasis on anti-immigrant sentimentality, right? That's what people are reacting against, right? In mass, that is what people are reacting against, is this sort of gaslighting and subversion of what's really going on.
Well, right? I think, and I think they should, and I think they're entitled to. People are upset, people are pissed off, and the open borders policies that have been adopted in the West are just not sustainable over time. And I think if you're on the street trying to put together $1 to make 15 cents and support your family, you know it. And so when somebody comes in and says, "Here I am, where's my hotel? Where's my check? Where are my benefits for having snuck into the country?" Folks who are out there working for it are going to be a little upset. And when tensions rise and one of the new arrivals concludes that this isn't the best of all possible worlds, perhaps it wasn't so bad back home, and somebody probably with a mental illness snaps and injures innocent people, children, women out doing holiday shopping, what do you expect is going to happen? Do you think we're all going to get together and sing Allahu Akbar? Why can't we be friends? Or do you think people are going to say enough is enough? This is our home, and you can try to sell me an agenda that says the world's invited into my bedroom, but it's really not. And I think there is going to be a pushback. And I think the folks in Ireland don't strike me as unhinged right-wing lunatics from the fringes of social media. They strike me as mom and pop in middle America, middle Dublin, whatever that means over there, in Ireland or in Holland, in Argentina, and across the world. There's something unsustainable and unrealistic about the dominant narratives, and people are going to want to take their lives back. That's what this is about. But you got me interested, Mike. Who to the right of Donald Trump is going to emerge in the United States? That's a sort of mind-bending concept.
Well, it's not necessarily who. It's what are the policies and what is the platform going to be, right? If we want to use history as a teacher, as a tool to inform how these cycles ebb and flow, it is necessarily the case that we can look back and we can look at Western European history in particular, and it doesn't have to be somewhere narrowed in on the early 20th century, right? It could be the late 17th and 18th centuries, right? We can look at the way that these things happen, and we've talked about immigration as an issue here multiple times. In the book name is escaping me. Hold on.
Camp of the Saints, Jean Raspail's book. Yeah.
Yes. It's here, right? It's here. It's of course that's fiction, but I guess what I'm saying is that the entire Western world is being told by their betters, by their leaders, elected and otherwise, the bureaucrats, the appointees here in America, the three co-equal branches of government, right? Federal, state, local. Everybody has been, since the pandemic, has been conditioned in these various ways, and it seems like it's a healthy mix of sort of the what do you call those who are not dumb, not smart enough, not wise enough to realize that they are tools, right? But the ignorant fools,
judges. Right? No, excuse me.
However, there is this sense of wanting this sort of self-importance and narcissism that has led unqualified and incompetent people to assume positions of leadership and influence at state, local levels, and at the federal level as well, but even more so at local levels. And then what we are getting in return for that is necessarily the consequence of those people not realizing that they are being used as tools in a larger scheme, and that they are thereby defying what the constituents want, right? And that's just sort of an
maybe, but I just sort of blanch at the idea of a larger scheme. I simply don't believe that there is a global elite behind the scenes pushing strings or pulling strings and pushing us in certain directions. I think there are trends, tendencies, and factors at work in our ideas and how we conceive of the world. And I think those are collective experiences. And as we've argued, or I've argued here many, many times, the bottom has fallen out of pluralism. There was a point where we agreed that there were many roads to the truth, and we respected individual journeys and thought that society was better off by permitting people to travel their own way. Now we've abandoned the search for truth, and we've said there are many roads to go wherever you want to go, and we can let people arrive there without consequence. And I think the fact of the matter is it doesn't work. It destroys a sense of community. You invite the world in, and the common norms that guide your community are suddenly imperiled. You can't tell the difference between a suicide bomber and a freedom fighter, or a member of Hamas who kidnaps children, and a nation that defends itself. Then you've got problems.
Thank you, Maury, useful idiot. My brain is on slow mode this morning. But
what's up?
Useful idiots is the phrase I was looking for. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Well, hey, Maury, there you are. Yeah. Hey, I thought he directed that to me.
Well,
hey,
while we have a brief pause here, over on Rumble, In the Cloud has now become a monthly supporter. Thank you, In the Cloud. We also have Dawn McNeil over from YouTube. She migrated from YouTube to a better life over on Rumble.
Yeah, I miss her here on YouTube. I used to see these little notes from her, die AH. I always wondered what AH is. Your time has come, white male. You decrepit fossil. Isn't it time to depart this mortal coil? Get with the program. It's go become black. Don't go back. She's one day she sent me a love note. Looking at you gave me a whole new meaning of white fright. You're so old. I thought you died last decade. Dawn, I can't believe you left and went to another platform. Hey, what about Tucker Carlson? Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump. We flagged that a few days ago, you and I, in a private discussion, and never talked about it. Is Tucker, I think, isn't he overdue? I'd heard stories and intimations that he was about ready to unfold or unveil a new media platform in November. Well, here we are at the end of November, and I haven't seen it. He's killing it on X. I see his name floated as a potential running mate for Donald Trump. And why not? If we've got a comic running the Ukraine, Milei in Argentina, Tucker with Trump, what do you say to that? Heartburn time.
Well, it's not heartburn. I think that
we'd like to thank our new sponsor, Robitussin. When things get a little too intense and you need to reach for the medicine cabinet, Robitussin has the answer. Mike.
careful if I act like my son, this stream will end prematurely, and I'll have to go buy new computer parts and stuff like that.
Okay, here's a shout out to projectile vomiters everywhere. Mike has a young son this week who was sick. That's why we weren't on Wednesday. Those of you who thought we'd been abducted by Hamas and we were being held hostage while Israel negotiated for our release, they wouldn't, were wrong. So let's just skip the references to projectile vomiting.
Well, there was no vomiting involved. I was just saying for the Robitussin. Has anybody ever willingly taken that stuff, or Vicks 44? I think Angry Dog can probably tell some stories.
I think Angry Dog snorts Vicks, doesn't he? You know? I once talked to Angry Dog. He's got a drawl so deep that they tried to throw him out of the South that they couldn't understand him. When I talked to Angry Dog on the telephone, or over the electronic areas, I could smell chewing tobacco. I mean, I don't even know how that happened. This guy's got a spittoon in his backyard the size of an Olympic pool, and he's complaining it's not big enough. Angry Dog is a certifiable Southerner. He likes chaw. He likes to say y'all, and he's a relative. Isn't he of yours, Mike?
He might be. He might be. I might have gotten 99% of my features from that man.
Oh, really? That explains it then. Huh. All right. Well, no.
Anyway,
he's not devastatingly handsome, suave, debonair, and brilliant as you are. So I don't think you got it all from him.
Well,
but Tucker,
the beauty of youth is that it fades, right?
I wouldn't know. I was young once, but then pterodactyls went extinct.
Tucker Carlson. Here is my view of Tucker. I think that he would make a phenomenal public leader, elected leader in the United States at whatever domain. Of course, I would like him to be in the executive leadership role, whether that's vice president or even president. I am at the same time disheartened by the prospect that we as a intellectual consortium would basically sacrifice him to that life, because I find such beauty and simplicity in the way that he lives. I am inspired by his entrepreneurial pursuits, and I have such a respect for his mind and his vision and the way that he goes about things. I think that he is the last of a dying breed. I don't want that to be the case, but at the same time, that would be his decision to make. And I would.
Well, let me mess with your head a little bit. Tucker, Donald's got a sign up. Looking for running mate. Must be smart, young, audacious, to the right of center, and willing to endure the slings and arrows of the outrageous mainstream media. And Tucker Carlson and Vivek Ramaswamy apply. You are advising Trump on whom to select. Who do you select and why? Man. Oh, I can feel certain pieces of your anatomy shriveling. And don't speak in a high-pitched voice. That's a tough choice.
Look,
I have to really think about that.
Let's see. I think.
Oh, yeah. I think, therefore I am. I should have warned you about this, but I wanted to see folks see you. I wanted folks to see you cogitate in real time. So,
I want to win, right? I mean, don't you want to win, Norm? You're a winner, right?
I don't.
As much as I love, and I do. I have really. Well, I was ringing the Vivek bell before anybody in our little circle here, and I certainly have pushed
Vivek versus Tucker,
but
sitting in a tree.
It's Tucker all day.
And why? Why?
Because I want to win.
Okay. And so he's got the brand and the platform, and he's got the chops, and he's been exposed to ideological issues and ideological conflict.
Well, and it may be in line with what I was giving Tucker flowers about just a few moments ago, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know how old Tucker is, but I sense that he is at least a couple of decades senior to Vivek. Right. And
at least a decade or so. Yeah.
So, and I would say that if we wanted to preserve the youth, and the utility and the vitality of someone like Vivek, that if now would be Tucker's time before Vivek, if that were the choice, and then we preserve Vivek for future sort of succession planning. Right.
Next topic. Let's swing. What do you think of the ceasefire in Gaza? Good news, bad news, a mistake for Israel?
You go first on that one.
Well, so look, if a candid reading of history in the Middle East suggests that there will be no peace in our time, and perhaps any time. Israel was created in the modern state of Israel was created in the 20th century through the activities of the United Nations. Previous to that, when Britain took over and had a mandate under the League of Nations in the early 20th century, they tried to propose a division of the land into an Arab and an Israeli state. In the late 19th century, Jews began to flock to Israel when Zionism as an ideology was created by Theodore Herzl. And at every step of the way, there has been bloodshed. The Arab world has refused to accept Israel as a nation. The Arab world has vowed to drive Israel and the Jews into the sea. And even now the rhetoric is that they will eradicate Israel. Those who support the Palestinians will say, look, prior to the arrival of Israel, people were living in Palestine. They were deprived of their lands, in some cases forced off the lands, in other cases fled out of fear for what would happen next as a result of a violent conflict incident to the creation of the state of Israel. All of that's true. If you're a Jew, where else were you going to go? Europe had closed its doors to you. In fact, Germany had sought to incinerate the Jewish people and did, some 6 million of them. The Western world stood silently by and let it occur. There were ships of Jewish refugees that were refused admission to the United States and elsewhere and sent back to Europe because the world didn't care. And so if you're going to take a stand, you care for yourself and you've created your own home. These are two immovable objects, Israel and Palestine. And, my view is that Hamas has been used by the Arab world as a thorn on the side of Israel. The Arab world has the resources to absorb migration or to absorb immigrants. There is no strong nationalist culture of a Palestinian country. There was no Palestinian nation prior to the Jewish people arriving. There were roughly about 700,000 Palestinians living in the area, many of them Bedouins, some in cities in Palestine proper, Jerusalem, Hebron, for example. But these are folks that have never lived well together. There are many Arab Israelis, and there's a debate within Israel about whether they're second-class citizens or not. I get it. But the Arab world has the resources to absorb the Palestinian refugees and has refused to do so for 70 plus years. They've kept them as a festering boil on the side of Israel to be poked, prodded, and permitted to explode from time to time to advance the interests of the Arab world. If you're a Jew living in Israel, you have no choice but to fight back and to fight to the death. If you're an Arab and living in the Gaza Strip and no one else will have you, of course you're going to turn to violence to try to vindicate your claims. I believe that when Hamas orchestrated a mass attack on Israel on October 7th, 2023, that included the rape and murder of children and women and the kidnapping of children, women, and grandparents, and the holding of hostage and the use of civilian facilities as shields against reprisal from Israel, that they lost the support, in my view. They lost my support, and they should lose the support of the civilized world. By engaging in this conduct, they resorted to conduct which is the very antithesis of what the West values. And so I support Israel's right to strike back and to strike back hard. And I think they've done so in a civilized manner by providing notice to communities, by helping assist with humanitarian aid, by helping to evacuate people from the hospitals. I don't think that's ever going to be enough for the propaganda machine. I think the subtext in so much of the anti-Israeli and anti-Semitic rhetoric right now is that Jews don't have a right to exist and the world would be better off without them. And I think that's dead wrong. I think when you look at Western civilization, it all begins with, the Judeo-Christian tradition. We have an account of creation that comes in the book of Genesis that has been taught to millennia of school children, or at least used to be. And from it comes an ethos of respect for individuals and a respect for creation and a respect for the created world. What's the substitute for that? I think in the end, Islam is likely to win if there is a battle of civilizations, because the West has spent itself. We've gone off the deep end and we no longer have the ability to stand up and say, this is wrong, this is intolerable. But because the bottom has fallen out of privilege, pluralism, because we cherish diversity for diversity's sake, we'll welcome the killer into our home and say, please kill me with kindness. And then when we're stabbed and we protest, we will be called right-wing lunatics and savages by our elite, because our elite has lost any sense of what a good world would look like and what they stand for. They stand for everything and therefore nothing all at the same time. Islam, on the other hand, and its monotheistic version and vision of conquest and of the need to convert others and of the afterlife, is a strong monotheistic tradition right now, which will mobilize a people on the move, a people in search of roots. And so I think that in the long run, Islam is the likely winner in this struggle, unless the West can pick itself up by its bootstraps and reorient itself around fundamental values, the story of creation. Why is it that Western elites would rather believe that we are avatars in a video game by children played in some universe we can't discern in the infinity of space and time? Why is that an acceptable orientation to the world, while creationism is ridiculed? We're ridiculing the tradition that sustained us and complaining that we're losing the life we value, and we're welcoming into our midst folks who've declared war against the values that made us, and we have only ourselves to blame for this. So from my perspective, Mike, I stand with Israel, because I think standing with Israel is standing with the values of Western civilization against savagery.
Well, it's complicated. So let me pull up this article. So I've been struggling with this for as long as we've been discussing this issue. I told you that this felt more complex to me because the likes of the ADL and the likes of many of these sort of nonprofit organizations that historically have pledged themselves to defending civil liberties and the balance of the Constitution struck between civilized society and individual liberty interests. But what seems obvious to me is that, well, what is not obvious to me is that the ADL isn't in part responsible for the scourge and the rise in anti-Semitic behavior and many of the protests that we are now seeing co-opted in a manner that is a la Black Lives Matter after the George Floyd riots in 2020, right? And so there is an article on the American Mind published November 21st by Paul Gottfried. I do commend it to everybody. This finally, someone is writing about what I guess what I am seeing and hearing, and the way that this intuitively strikes me, Norm, right? Sort of resisting that polarity.
I haven't read the article. Break it down for us. What does he say?
So here's the subtitle: Liberal Jews are desperate to maintain the delusion that their major enemies are outside the house. And the first sentence is spectacular. Paul says, though I find no reason to defend everything that Tucker Carlson and his talking partner Candace Owens said recently in a discussion that has been widely denounced in news commentaries extending from the leftist Israeli newspaper Haaretz to the neoconservative New York Post, I'll concede at least one point to Tucker in the latest courting of controversy. He posed a long overdue question about those who are now pulling their donations from the Ivies and other prestigious universities. Why did these presumably mostly Jewish donors, after decades of lavishing their largesse on radical institutions, suddenly stop this practice when these institutions went from defending white genocide to backing Arab terrorists? And should we be praising these benefactors with the buyer's remorse because they finally began noticing evil when their own ethnic group came under attack? My answer is absolutely not. That is, in essence, Norm, my position on all of this. And those two things, what you're saying, can live.
It does. I mean, I think that the ideology of difference for difference's sake, it looks fine as long as you're not the different one being skewered. And suddenly, when the right of Israel to exist, or the right of Jews to exist, becomes targeted as something antithetical to the liberation needs of the oppressed, you're going to identify with your own group, and you're going to identify with your own heritage. You've got skin in the game, and I think that's the fallacy of modern pluralism and of DEI. We all have skin in a collective game that we play together. And by dividing the world into warring camps in a world of limited resources, where every struggle becomes a zero-sum game for survival, don't be surprised if you become targeted. I'm not sure I understand the piece in the American Mind all that well yet, Mike. I'm not sure I understand your point all that well. I'll be looking at it over the weekend and looking forward to it.
And again, it's just, this is giving color to my my reluctance to really indulge what conversations seem to be low hanging and available on this topic, right? And I don't want to get into this cycle of saying over and over and over the same things. My position is that we should be looking to accomplish something the same way that we would approach this issue when it comes to COVID, right?
Well,
and
I might,
any of the other matters.
I don't need to cycle the drain endlessly to call Hamas a series of butchers who are worthy of death. That's just not something I need a lot of time to debate. If you're going to engage in a pre-dawn strike and target civilians, don't expect any quarter from me or any effort to understand anything about you. I mean, if I don't want to fall into a moral equivalency pit where we have to take every expression of rage and understand its causes to react in a possible and positive way. There are bright line tests, and the murder of civilians in that way, you flunked. Period.
Sure. And what I'm also pointing out is that there is something wrong here at home because our young people
that's
overwhelmingly doing things that favor one side of that equation. And it's not the side of the equation, Norm, that you are pledging defense of.
No, it's no side at all. These are people who believe in nothing and they've become nothing. Nihilism is the new value, and nihilism in the service of self-expression. And you can't build a society on nothing. You can't build a civilization on the hope that you'll be respected for whatever idiosyncratic norm you come through, you come across with the next day. It's just not going to happen. And thus the despair of Gen Z that they can't find a place in society, they've probably brought it on themselves. I mean, if I put an ad in the newspaper looking for help and somebody comes into my office with tattoos from head to toe and enough metal on their face that I need a metal detector to let them in the office, well, of course I'm going to be looking for another candidate. I don't want somebody who walks into my office and says it's all about me. And it's all about respecting me and my differences. I want somebody who can put their shoulder to a common wheel. And the benefit of Western civilization has been for centuries and millennia that we had commitments to common norms. And those norms are under assault. And I think it's important to pick a side and fight back. And so my view is support of Israel is support of Western civilization.
And so here's a component part of this article from Paul that I want to make sure that I read out loud for the audio only listeners, but also just as an additional point to make before we move on. But it says, quote, attempts by many Jewish activists on the left to defend Israel while blaming the present surge of anti-Semitism on a right-wing whipping boy have become an embarrassing obsession. They can't seem to deal with certain realities. The anti-Israeli hysteria coming overwhelmingly from the left and registered Democrats. This doesn't mean that everyone on the other side is totally in agreement with the Israeli government, but the energy and violence associated with pro-Hamas agitation and demonstrations are issuing entirely from one side of the political spectrum. That's and so I guess where I'm sitting, Norm, for everything that you and I agree on and the positions that we take, the suggestions that we make to the people who join us every morning, and the analyses that we make on the higher profile cases that affect everything from speech to privacy, to the development of digital currencies, the geopolitical landscape with respect to all three of these things, social media. What I think is that Trump was a reaction. It was a populist reaction, right? And it was a righteous populist reaction. But what everybody who is not on the political left has been told is that they are deplorable by everybody who holds any sort of cultural cash or political capital within mainstream politics for the last 7-8 years now, Norm. And what I'm saying is that this acknowledges not only that intuition, that reactionary stance from the Trump supporters is not only valid, but that the likes of the ADL owe a huge debt of gratitude to the people who were willing to make untold sacrifices in that effort, to do grassroots campaigning, to get out there and to make sure that the voices of the unheard were actually heard, right? Whether 2020 went one way or the other, not up for debate at this point, right? Even though people still are debating. My point is simply, without those people that you have spent the last 5 to 7 years completely castigating, completely pillorying, completely dehumanizing, calling stupid and idiotic, right? calling for and then gaslighting into thinking that all the problems of the country. Look at how obvious of an example this is, Norm.
Well,
This is right, and what they are owed is much more than an apology from these self-righteous people that sit in these institutions that they had no hand in building the credibility of, the reputation for, the pocketbooks of, right? Just normal average people are looking around and they're seeing, yes, there are problems. And then all of a sudden it takes something like this, where TikTok is 10xing and 20xing the views of the virality of pro-Hamas demonstrations in the US to a demographic of people that can't even legally purchase alcohol. There's a real problem. And guess who we can look at and blame?
Well, it's not going to be the ADL. They're part of a larger problem, and I'm just going to push back against anything that I regard as an anti-Semitic current. I think the ADL has its issues. I've sued the ADL. I've sued the ADL for defamation and calling somebody anti-Semitic who just wasn't, and we resolved that
in with the Southern Poverty Law Center, the ACLU. I am speaking that the appeal to the ADL is because the ADL is the most active, right?
No, they're the most convenient right now. And so I'll defend the ADL because, if I were Jewish, never again would be first on my lips. I traveled to the Holocaust Museum in DC early on. And as I watched the horror of that, never again was the recoil in my mind, and I understood it. And so, it's obviously a topic for much discussion going forward.
100%. And I hope that, Norm, I don't want you to misunderstand me, or I really don't want anybody watching or listening to misunderstand me. Again, my position isn't contrary to Norm's whatsoever. But I'm saying that
to me, that might be a good place to be most days.
Well, but and I'm not contrary to your position. But what I'm saying is that there's an overly simplistic and more viral narrative around this stuff that would coerce people to being rigid and unmoving in their stance and render them unable to evolve their conception of the issues. Well, all I'm hoping to do with this is to simply point out an example where our institutions, Norm, have absolutely failed in guiding us to rationalizations of these more complex situations. And this is a glaring one in my opinion.
I think the ceasefire may be an example of what's at stake, because I think it's a mistake, candidly. I think that by giving a ceasefire while we recognize Hamas, return people on demand that they are demanding be released in exchange for hostages they took, give them an opportunity to regroup and prepare for the next phase of the conflict, is a mistake. I've always taken the view that you don't negotiate with terrorists. Hamas won this round of chess. They said checkmate, or they said check, and Israel moved the queen. Let's see what happens next. I think that getting the hostages back is obviously a good thing. Releasing people who Hamas demanded in exchange, and giving Hamas an opportunity to rebuild and regroup and prepare further is a mistake. Israel should keep its feet on the gas and drive Hamas into the sea. That's where I am, and that's where I'm going to be for the foreseeable future.
So based on this Reuters report, Norm, it says that there are 50 hostages of the 240 that are expected to be released, and I think that starts today.
I think that the ceasefire began at 12 a.m. Eastern time, is my understanding, and they're going to release some, and there's a commitment that if at least 10 are released each day, the ceasefire will continue each day for so long as that goes on. We'll see. We'll see. One thing is certain: the conflict in the Middle East will never end. I been puzzling over this and reading books on the history of Israel in my spare time, and over the last week it's occurred to me, were I a Jewish person, I might just let the Arab world have Israel and just move elsewhere. It's just not worth the trouble. And, in a way, that's giving in, knuckling under to the hatred. But at some point, you just have to accept that you're not going to be welcome in their midst. And frankly, the situation in Israel is so fraught, it makes New Jersey look attractive to me. If I were a Jewish person living in Jerusalem, I'd think, maybe Hoboken is a place to be, because the perpetual strife, the mortal conflict, decade after decade, I don't know what that does to a person. I'm not sure I could withstand that pressure. But hey, happy Black Friday, everybody. Get out there, get some sales, but remember to pay for what you've taken. This isn't a true,
how dare you? How dare you? encourage our followers to pay more than what the market will bear.
Okay, wait for Cyber Monday then, and let the digital overlords rape you. That would be far better.
I guess it's tougher to get a 5-finger discount on Cyber Monday than it is on Black Friday, right?
Probably, yeah.
Well, for us dinosaurs, maybe. Anyway, Norm, happy Friday.
Yeah, it is. Well, I'm still kind of snowed in up here in Vermont. We had enough snow and enough freeze that I don't think I can get down off my hill. I may try it today, though. I haven't been off the hill in about 3 days, and even my dog is looking at me kind of funny this morning. Here she is. She's the co-producer.
Oh, what a cutie.
That's Athena. Athena, say hi to everybody.
Hey, Athena.
Well, she wants to eat the microphone. That's my dog.
Well, let's see. Anything we need to wrap up here?
Let's hit it back on Monday. Thanks. This was a rambling Friday, folks. I think Mike and I were both still, frankly, at the Thanksgiving table last night. But we covered the high points, and we'll cover other points next week. Come back to Law and Legitimacy, folks. Mike, how do folks find us?
We're here on YouTube, Rumble Live, and we're also on X at LawPod Daily. Follow us there. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Overcast, wherever premium podcasts are found. I had a thought, but it flew away.
Oh my God, wait, stop. You did.
It flew away though. Right?
Well, there you go. Hey, Angry Dog and Pat Clifton, the other Angry Dog. I'm just teasing with you. Like Maury's jumping to your defense now about you're a gentleman and a scholar and blah, 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 blah. I know that. I just, my heart goes out to you. I know life is tough south of the Mason-Dixon line, and not everyone can live in the font of civilization. That is New England.
Look, Janice is telling you to go out and play in the snow. And again, thank you to everyone over on Rumble. We've got We Hear Well, T-Girl, it's me again. Dawn McNeil. Dawn has been stirring the pot over on Rumble this morning, so go get it, Dawn. MDMA is here as well. And then again, another thank you to In the Cloud for becoming a monthly supporter. We very much appreciate that. But we will see you back here on Monday. The thought that I forgot was that we are going to do a Cyber Monday edition. So we'll be breaking down the OpenAI, Sam Altman stuff, as well as the juxtaposition of OpenAI with Twitter's Grok. So that'll be good. I'll do some background over the weekend, try to get a sense of the chronology of events leading to Sam Altman's, departure from OpenAI, and then now his reemergence, and then the sort of overly woke, overly DEI takes that we're now seeing that OpenAI needs a more diverse board to oversee the future of the development of artificial intelligence, because we got to feel good on our way to subjugation. Anyway, Norm.
All I know is I'm counting down the hours to the Michigan-Ohio State game. And if Michigan wins, I'll be manic. If Ohio State wins, I'll be manic. It's just which direction the mania will be pointed in. Go Blue, beat Ryan Day. I want to just say to you, Ohio State supporters out there, the reports that the Aggies may be looking at Day, he's feathering his nest, because when he drops a third straight game to Michigan, they're going to run him out of Columbus on a rail. Go Blue.
Yeah, go Blue. Nobody likes Ohio State. See you
free Harbaugh. Michigan versus everyone. Right, Athena?
See you, Norm.
Ciao.